redicecreations.com is our website, and we do radio on all the topics that we consider to be interesting and important. Stream or download radio on demand that you can listen to at your convenience directly from our website. Today, researcher Jordan Maxwell returns to our program to continue our conversation about symbolism, the occult, the cover-up of history, and the forces behind government, war, control, and religion. Okay, welcome back to Red Ice Radio, Jordan Maxwell. It is excellent to have you back with us so soon. How are you today, Jordan?
Well, thank you very much for having me on, and I'm still here despite everything.
Despite everything, yeah, that's
so
right.
I'm still here. I'm still working along, and always happy to be with you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely, it's great to have you, and we always enjoy hearing, from you, and of course, about your work and so forth as well. And I bet many people recall the last show that we did with you not too many months ago now, and we get a lot of email on that, a lot of traffic as well, of course. People are enthralled in your work, Jordan, that they are in one way or another, they're attracted to your work for obvious reasons, considering your background and how many years you've been studying this. And how are things generally right now over there for you, though? Are you keeping a close eye on the news, or have you decided to just turn it all off, considering all the bad news that we're getting currently, Jordan?
Well, I did that a long time ago. I turned it all off quite a long time ago. That's why I almost never talk about daily events or the events of the day or current events. I don't ever comment on current events because there's so much happening every day that, and people are hearing these current events 24/7 on their radio. So I don't feel that it's anything I want to comment on. I have a lot of really important things that I feel that I want to comment on that nobody talks about. So and when I was doing my own radio show, I've had my own show 7 times in the past, and I never talked about current events or what was going on in the world at the time. I couldn't care less. My interest is in all of the dark stuff which is hidden, that's timeless. It doesn't matter when you bring it up. It's always important, no matter when you might bring the subject up. So today I don't even care about listening to it. I hear it all the time like everyone else does, but
yeah.
It doesn't affect me. I don't care what's going on in the world. I have some bigger things that I'm concerned with.
Well, that is true, Jordan. I guess the reason why I bring this up is because sometimes now and then the time list that you do talk about seeps through, obviously, in the mainstream media. And one of the things that I know that you've been talking about quite a lot in the past, of course, as well, is this whole idea of the symbolism of the dawn.
Yeah.
And I guess the reason why I wanted to address that a little bit is because of some of the recent actions that have been taken against Libya, on Libya, and the fact that they dubbed the whole operation Odyssey Dawn. Did you hear about that, Jordan? Yeah.
Oh, yes. And because every time they do something like that, every time some government in the world comes up with something with dawn in it, I get tons of emails from all over the world, quite literally from all over the earth. Saying, well, here it is again, Jordan, what you were saying. I started talking about the symbolism, the occult or hidden implications of the term dawn and dawn of a new day. And I've been looking at it since 1967. So that's a long time ago. I don't even know how many years that is, but it's well over like 35, 40 years ago. I was talking about and looking and researching this subject of the new dawn, or the dawn of the new day, in relation to the occult world, what that means. And it is so well hidden, you will never be able to figure it out unless somebody shows you the connections, because it's so deeply rooted in the ancient world, and it's a type of subject that unless you see it a long time, over and over, before you finally begin to understand what the symbolism means. And that's quite a subject, that whole idea of the dawn. That was even before this last one. There was another one where Obama said that at the end of last year, I think he said they were going to change the whole operation in the Middle East and call it Operation New Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, man, it's right there in your face. I know exactly what he's talking about. It's just, unfortunately, the rest of this country of America, they have no idea in the world what he's talking about. So it's quite a story, that whole concept and whole hidden or occult idea of the new dawn, a dawn of a new day. Boy, that's really a scary subject when you get into it, and we could probably talk about that a bit today.
What do you make of the occult aspects of warfare overall? Or do we just tie some of the loose ends together in terms of this recent invasion? Now it happened on March 19th. This was the Jewish day of Purim, by the way, and it was also the day where they invaded Iraq in 2003, also on March 19th.
Yep.
And this Purim, the festivity, there was, as far as I recall, this was when the ancient Hebrews were released from their captivity in, I think it was in Persia, ancient Persia, or possibly, Babylon. What is the significance of that, do you think? Does that part play into this as well?
Well, I heard a guy working for the government here in America, CIA or NSA agent, was on the radio, and he said that, I thought it was very important. He said, my job at the agency is I carry a laptop computer, which is filled with all of the hidden dates and mystical symbols and dates. And that's one of my jobs, is to correlate and connect dates and times with the ancient occult world. And he said, I've been doing that for years. That's one of the things I do for the CIA. I just thought that was very interesting, that there are people hired to do nothing but check all the ancient dates of the world, religious observances, all the symbols, and then make it available for the modern day military-industrial complex and governments to start their wars, to end their wars, all kinds of manipulation based on ancient significant dates and mystical symbols. So yeah, there is something to this whole idea that these wars are started on certain days, they end on certain days. It's all part of a blood ritual that's been going on for thousands of years. It's really quite an extraordinary story when you start looking into the world of the occult. And the very word occult, I would caution, simply means hidden. Doesn't mean it's bad or evil or of the devil. Occult is a Latin word simply meaning hidden. And so much of what is actually going on, factual history, has been hidden. And that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons why the world is in so much confusion. Because there are two realities at work right now on the earth. There's the one you see and you understand, the one everyone lives by. That's one reality. But the actual reality of the world is far, far different. There's a whole hidden world of symbolism, words, terms, and emblems, national coats of arms, halotry, flags. It's corporate logos. There's a whole underworld of darkness going on throughout the world, and it's basically the bottom line on government, religion, commerce. All use these occult symbols and manipulate times and dates. So that's what I've been interested in all my life, and I saw this thing about dawn of a new day, and the new day and the new dawn symbolism. As I said, back as far back as 1967, and I began researching and studying it. And I'm telling you, there is more to this story than meets the eye. And if you've seen my video called Dawn of a New Day, that doesn't even begin to scrape the surface of what I have. But I had to boil it all down so I could get it onto one little video. But I could do about an 8-hour lecture just on that symbol with how Hollywood uses the exact same words and terms in movies and music, television shows, and business, corporations. It's everywhere. And if you understand the significance of the symbol of the sun rising between two mountains and the term dawn of a new day or new dawn, if you understand the hidden symbolism as it is used by the occult world. Now, there is a magazine in Australia called New Dawn. I love that magazine.
That's
I
great.
love the people.
Yeah, that's
that.
right.
They are sensational. They're using the term in a generic way. And I know because I've talked with them, and I know they're using it in a generic way, basically the way the ancient peoples originally understood the concept of New Dawn, meaning that the sun was the bringer of light. And the light that came into the world, well, we know that light is always associated with intellectual or spiritual enlightenment. Mm. So when you're ignorant, you are in the dark. But when you're enlightened, you are a holder of light, or your whole life emanates light. And so, and the correct, and a good way of using that, the New Dawn magazine is using it in that way. But there is an occult use of it by politicians and religious leaders, and especially the commercial systems of this world use that in its dark way, and the really occult and hidden symbolism. And this is what one of my latest videos is also a follow-up on that Dawn of a New Day video. I've got a new one out called Lucifer and the New Age, which touches on that same subject again about the dawn. It has to do with also Lucifer. It has to do with the New Age. It has to do with interesting connections to religion and commerce and government, and it's really, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most important subjects on the earth today. And I haven't even scraped the surface with that. With my first try, my first video was called Dawn of a New Day. Mm. That's I think probably well enough done that you can at least get the point of what I'm trying to say, because I don't have the funds or the help to actually put together a top of the line presentation like I would like to. I've never had the money to do the things I wanted to do because I spend all of my time in libraries reading and studying. And if you do that day in and day out for 50 years and just try and stay alive, and you're ultimately going to pay the price by not having anything, because it's an old saying that poverty is the disease of a scholar. And the reason why is because if you're going to school, if you're out every day doing research and studying, you're not out making money. Well, at the end of your life, you find out you don't have any money to do anything with the knowledge that you have. So that's always been my problem. So now I just put the information out there the best I can with what I have to work with.
Which is great. It needs to get out there. And again, what you have is a treasure in terms of many of the things you have dug up, both in the past and what you're doing currently, and also, that many people are, learning and advancing from that. It's like an own little online school, if you will, but there's no kind of a curriculum. People can come to this from whatever angle, and they can continue it, in whatever way they want, which is, fantastic.
That's right. I'm not trying to present any kind of my own ideas. I'm very interested in just showing where things come from, where concepts and ideas originate, and how they have mutated and evolved and came down to us today. And so when you begin to see where the things that we believe today, where they actually came from, and get the etymology of the words and the terms and the symbols, and then you begin to see that everything you're looking at today has a history. Nothing developed none of this that we live in today and on this earth, none of it evolved from a vacuum. everything has connection to something earlier. You know, our corporations were around, say, 20 years ago. Well, they have new symbols and new words today, but then they can go back to 1900s. They can be taken back to 1860s, and you can keep going backwards into history and seeing where the more we change, the more we stay the same. We're still pushing the same occult, hidden symbolism, words and terms, and government is still doing today what it has always done, manipulate the masses of the people and keep them ignorant. So,
absolutely. Jordan, I want to ask you a little bit about, you alluded to historical, basically, cover-up before as well. I mean, people have to realize that things that are happening today in Libya or, Iraq or Afghanistan, that's been happening in many parts of the world 1,000 years ago in some cases.
Absolutely.
And this seems it seems to be an agenda, of destruction of knowledge and spreading of the confusion that you alluded to earlier as well. And again, this has been going on for thousands of years. But what do you think is the primarily, driving force behind this? Is this connected with the spreading of the knowledge of the Luciferian agenda, or how does the Christian or the Vatican come into this, Jordan?
Well, I think that what we're seeing in these wars and conflicts around the world are basically boils down to religions. And religions, not modern-day religions, but the modern-day religions of the world today are nothing more than the modern-day interpretation of the ancient world religions. And of course, in the ancient world, there was nothing but wars and bloodshed and violence between cultures and religious cultures in the ancient world. Well, we're still doing these crusades of the Middle Ages. We're still having a crusade with the Vatican manipulating America and England into going into the Middle East for the Vatican purposes. That's why we're in the Middle East. It has nothing. I don't think it has much to do at all with oil, but I think it has more to do with religion and cultural clashes of the ancient world, and we're still seeing it happening today. So, this whole thing about the dawn of a new day, it ties in Nazism, communism, fascism, capitalism, especially monopolistic capitalism. But this whole concept of the new dawn and dawn of a new day also can be traced back to the earliest beginnings of the Roman Catholic Church in the 4th century. The symbolism of the beginnings of Roman Catholicism, using the symbols and terms of the dawn of a new day. There's a very big story here, as I said, that I haven't even begun to get into the real implications of that symbol of the sun rising today. I mean, Jesus is referred to as God's Son, our risen Savior. So I am totally convinced from what I've been looking at theology for the past 45 to 50 years that there's a world of difference between the concepts and ideas of the original Christianity, as far back as where it actually began, as opposed to what we have and what we're calling Christianity today. Christianity today has nothing to do with the original concepts of Christianity going back to the 1st, and 2nd, and 3rd century. And with the coming of the 4th century, when the Vatican, Rome was in collapsing, and it mutated, the Roman Empire mutated into the Vatican. And from there, we have the Teutonic Knights, with the whole concept of the Teutonic knighthood having a Messiah, a Teutonic Messiah, which gave the world the Hitler complex. So there's a very ancient story about Christianity that's never been told to the people today. So I believe, it's just my opinion, but I've been looking at this for 50 years. I believe that today's religious world of Christianity is actually a tool that was developed by the Illuminati to control the world. And I think that Christianity itself today bears no resemblance to the original Christianity in its very original form. And I've talked with so many of the rabbis and teachers and professionals and all of the truly interesting people who have been doing research on all of this kind of subjects, all their life. And that's generally what I'm hearing and what I'm getting, is that the church today does not represent Christianity in its original form at all. Mm. It's a religio-political, commercial system that was developed around the 4th century, and was basically developed to be a religious, political, sociological world movement. And it bears, and when you begin looking at the symbols, the words, and the terms that are used today in the churches, you begin to see the connections between Illuminism, Luciferianism, the Illuminati, manipulation of governments, money. It's a hell of a subject. There's no doubt about that. And it's not the kind of thing you can explain adequately, on a radio show. I mean, you have to do a 4 or 5 hour video presentation where you show all the symbols and words and show how it has evolved over the years and mutated.
Yeah.
Then people begin to understand for the first time.
Absolutely, and in some regards, it's a life study trying to incorporate the history of the world and trying. I mean, as you know, this goes on and on. There's new things coming to the surface all the time, and just
all the time.
Throughout the day here, I've been watching some programs on the how the Goths up here in Sweden were taken over and Christianized, by Charlemagne sending out people like Ansgard, the saint from Bremen and Hamburg in Germany around I think it was around 500-600, something like that. But what always has been curious to me is how this little sect in the Middle East, the Essenes or whatever, that particular theology, if you will, or that religion was something that was picked up by the Roman Empire, kind of converted into their own version of this, and then exported and forced upon the rest of the world, when there's so many other religions and stories out there. Why do you think that is, Jordan? Any idea about that?
What you've just said, what you've just enumerated, is exactly what I just said. That's precisely right. How the Roman Empire, and when it was in its last days, it mutated and continued to live on through the Vatican. And the Vatican, of course, picked up on the ancient stories in the Middle East, then put their own spin on it and developed a whole new religion, calling it Christianity. And so the original story has been lost totally.
Yeah.
And anyone who would carry on that original story of Christianity was persecuted by the church, hunted down, and murdered. So that you look at the history of the Roman Church and the Roman system in Europe, and look at what it's done from about, as I said, about the 4th century on. And we have inquisitions where they were hunting down people who weren't going along with the new Roman religion.
Yeah.
And so the Bible is filled with all of these tales about they who would present themselves as worshipers of God and in point of fact be worshiping the dark side. And so that's why, I mean, I've been saying this for a long time, there's a biblical concept that has, the Bible has Jesus saying, by their fruits you will know them. The idea is that if you don't know what a seed is, you just have a seed, but you don't know what it is, the scriptural idea is to plant the seed and let it grow. And when it grows up, if it's an apple tree, well, then that tells you what the seed was. Mm. So wait and see what it will produce, and that will tell you what kind of a seed it was. Well, look at the world today, and especially in Europe and around the world. What is the fruitage of the seeds of Christianity today? Wars and bloodshed, corruption, drugs, gang wars, it's violence on the whole earth. By their fruits you shall know them. And that's why today I'm saying the Christians and Jews both are crying out and praying to God for protection of their family. All the time the Christians and Jews are praying to God for protection, the world is going deeper and deeper into bloodshed, violence, and horror, and demonic possession, drugs. So something is wrong somewhere. They're not able to communicate with the divine spirit. And the reason why is because the religions of the Western world are all based on the most ancient occult dark stuff. And that's why, by their fruits you shall know them. Mm-hmm. This is the fruitage of the church. Wars and revolutions, violence in the Middle East. The Islamic world is not what the Islamic people think it is. It has nothing to do with Muhammad. It's a very, very dark thing that's going on the earth. It's called religion. I have the highest of respect and honor for the spirit. I have the highest respect for spirit and spiritual things. I believe in God. But I know the difference between the Great Spirit and the universe, and that divine presence in the universe that men have called God. But I know it's not on TBN, it's not on television, and it's not in any church or synagogue. So I'm smart enough to know that much to start with. So I believe it's an idea whose time has come to take a long, hard look at the world that we're living in, because the fruitage of our life in the Western world, Europe and America, has brought us nothing but violence, chaos, and confusion. I mean, that's one of the biggest telltale signs of how wrong we are, is that in every church in America, no one seems to have nailed down anything for sure. Every synagogue you go to, they've got different ideas and different concepts. And so if you go to a Jewish synagogue on one side of town, they've got one belief system. If you go to another one, they've got a totally different understanding. And if you talk to all of the Jews, they all give you different ideas and different concepts according to their understanding. So it's even worse in Christianity, because I've been through all the different Christian religions, and all I've ever seen in the Christian churches I've gone to, the Christian churches, not the cults like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, but the Christian churches, all I see is singing and dancing and entertainment and things which for the entertainment of the people. Nothing of any redeemable value. Nothing that educates the mind and causes you to think deeply about spiritual things. Right. No, there's nothing but guitars and noise and singing and hymns, and people feel good about it, but it doesn't do them any good. They don't know anything. So
now, from your perspective, do you feel that all of this, the fruits of this, is because of the religious programming, that this was kind of in the seed to begin with, or has this simply kind of degenerated throughout the hundreds and now up to thousands of years here, and now all that's left is kind of an unconscious, insanity, if you will, or has this been planned?
Yeah, no, I would say no. It wasn't. It hasn't developed into this insanity. I'm saying that as far back as the 4th century, it was planned, the insanity. Right. Yeah. People who gave us the Vatican, the people who gave us our modern-day Christian religion, knew exactly what they were doing. They had an agenda. They were the Roman system of politics and religion and commerce. And so they already knew what they were doing. They were putting together a religion that would hold the glue, that would hold the empire together and ultimately dominate the world. So the great kings and leaders of the church, they had no misunderstanding about what they were doing. They were developing a religio-political, economic system that would eventually take over the entire Western world and would hope for one day take over the entire earth in a new order of the world.
The new world order, basically. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And it's the Christian church which has promoted it, and they don't even realize it. No, I'm not talking about the Christian people in the church. I'm talking about the actual heads of the corporations, the actual home office of the different churches. The Christian people have no idea in the world what's going on. I'm talking about the officials and the heads of all of these Protestant and Christian churches. They know what's really going on. They know who they are. I had an FBI agent in San Diego call me one time, and I think I may have said this to you before. I had an FBI agent call me a few years back, and he called and said this was a social call, it's not business. And he said, I just want to let you know that you're being listened to and watched by your government. And he said, but your government does not consider you to be a threat right now, because we understand that people are hearing you. We don't care if people hear you. What we're concerned with is that people listen to you. If they begin to actually listen to you rather than just hearing you like they hear anybody else,
right,
then you might be in more trouble. And he said, but right now your government does not consider you to be a threat. But, he said, however, if ever you're going to have any real trouble in this world, it's going to come from the church, not government. Government doesn't care what you're talking about, but the church is very, very bad. And he says, the church today, the Christian church today, this is an FBI man telling me, this is from San Diego. He said, the church today is a criminal operation. It's a criminal syndicate. They are lying to the people. They're manipulating them in politics. And so any organization, any kind of an organizational arrangement or an institution that can hold the people's voting power, they can control the people's spending, they can control the people's minds. You've got to know that's very, very bad stuff. So he says, so just be aware that you are being watched by the church. And if you begin to make too much of a headway against them, they will deal with you. Now, so I know, I understand.
I just want to say as well, I mean, now in many European countries at least, this was a news item a while back, actually, they mentioned that even the Christianity that they once held is considered to be dead. They mentioned, I think it was like Switzerland and Norway, and there was a few other countries as well, whereas like even the churches now are empty in that sense. And the question there, of course, is this is part of, as I feel, a bit of the illusion as well. I can feel it too in this country, in Sweden, where people are like laughing when you say that the church holds any power anymore. It's like, are you kidding? It's dead. It's over. It's falling apart. It doesn't hold any, assets, or it's not wealth anymore, which is not true, of course.
No, it's not true at all. But it's like anything else. In America, so much of America's big industry is mafia. It's underworld. But it's, like the movie Godfather, when Michael, in the first movie of Godfather, when Michael tells his girlfriend, he keeps telling her, he says, Kate, in 5 years, the family is going to be completely legit. The idea being is that the underworld in America and around, and even in Europe, they were making so much money that they began to invest in corporations, invest their money in the big corporations, General Motors, Ford Motor Company, U.S. Steel, and with hundreds of billions of dollars, from organized crime being pumped into these big corporations. Well, today, the big underworld families, in the shadow world, is big stockholders in all the major corporations. So that the major corporations are actually being run by criminals.
Yep.
But they're the only ones that got the money. and so that's what I'm saying. You've got to understand that the church is a corporation, and it's incorporated under the government, and the government's incorporated under the church. And the church is, goes all the way back to, like you said, Constantine, and the whole apparatus we call the religio-political economic system of the Western world is now falling apart. Why? It's because it's based on some very dark and evil stuff. And that's why I try and do what I do.
How do you think, though, that they manage to keep it alive, keep the agenda alive, keeping people coming to these organizations and continuing to, from our perspective, it seems that it goes on a pretty straight line. It's pretty steady from my perspective anyway. And I'm not saying that within the factions or within the church or within these families that there is strife and there's infighting going on, and from their perspective things might be much more difficult. But in any regard, the overarching picture that I get is that it's still kind of progressing forward their way in any regard. How do they manage that, do you think? I mean, are we talking about people who can live for a long time here, or is it just the ideology, the philosophy of this thing?
Well, I think, I told you, I think I mentioned one time before that people will always support what they want to hear. I mean, if you love country music, you're not going to pay $50 to go to a rap concert. If you love opera, you're not going to pay $50 to go to a rock and roll concert.
Right.
People will pay money to hear what they want to hear, and they will pay money to eat what they wish to eat, not go to a restaurant that they don't like. And so people will financially and in every other way support what they want to hear. Well, the big corporations, do something we call commercials, and they tell you wonderful things that you want to hear. It's just business, just to make money. Well, that's how the churches are able to continue to keep going, and especially in America, because it does not require any critical thinking or any wisdom and research and study. They merely tell the people what they want to hear, and the people love it. People, I have found that if you can tell an audience, or if you can, how would I say this? If you can go before an audience and show them that what they believe to be true is true, and prove it to them that what they believe to be true is the real truth, they will love you. They'll support you, give you money, and they will promote you and feed you all over the world because you are telling them that what they already believe to be true is true. That's what they want to hear. What they don't want to hear is that they are full of bull and they're being lied to. People don't want to hear that. Yeah. They're not going to give you money to hear that. They're not going to come down and sit down and pay money for you to show them meticulous and methodically how they have been lied to. I've found that out. People are not interested to come in and lectures to hear the real truth. They want to be entertained. That's why we have wrestling matches in Hollywood and entertainment. People pay big money to be entertained. They're not giving you a dime to tell them the truth. So, I mean, I've always known that my work is appealing to only a niche audience, a small, select audience.
So in a way, overall, collectively, I guess humanity, we brought it on ourselves, and we've allowed to be made into slaves, and we've allowed the knowledge that humanity, I believe, once held to be taken away from us.
That's exactly right. I mean, there's a story in the New Testament. I've said before many times, the New Testament is a metaphor. It's a symbolic story. And once you understand how the New Testament was taken from the ancient world and rearranged into a religion today, but if you can get past all of that and get to the actual metaphysical stories, the metaphors in the New Testament, it's a world of knowledge that's been hidden. But an example is that what we were just talking about, how the people themselves love the darkness. And they can't get enough of it, and they will always support it. There's a story in the Bible in the New Testament about Jesus being brought before the people by Pontius Pilate, and he says to the Pontius Pilate says to the crowds of the city that once a year, according to your custom, I can release one prisoner to you. And let one prisoner go. So I have two prisoners here today. We have Jesus, who we call the light of the world, and then we have Barabbas. Barabbas is a known criminal, a liar, a murderer. We know he's a criminal. So here are the two people. Well, that's a symbolic story. It's a metaphor. And the symbolism of the story is very simple. When you present to the world of mankind two different ideologies, one is based on the light and truth and decency and honor, or the other one is based on the darkness and evil and criminality, which one would you choose, Jesus or Barabbas? And the Bible says, with one voice, the town said, give us Barabbas, which is symbolically saying, as a metaphor, symbolically saying, when the people of this world are faced with, do you want the real truth or do you want lies? They will always support the lie. Give us Barabbas. We don't want the truth in the light. We don't want to hear anything about truth. We didn't come down here to hear truth. So give us the lie. Give us the people who are telling us lies. That's what a democracy is. I mean, a democracy is the rule of the people, and the people love the lie.
The majority rules, and it doesn't matter how insane the majority is either. It just keeps on
trucking, not at all.
You know? Yeah.
No, keeps on going, and we know the decadency of the Roman system, and how today all you have to do is look around America today and look at the decadent, incredible darkness that has engulfed this great country, so that there's ignorance, ill-informed, stupidity, violence, drug addiction, gang wars, prisons. This is a hellhole. And yet the church is doing real fine. The church is just doing fine. But the people who go to those churches, talk to them, intellectually sit down and talk to Christians today in America. And you will find they don't know what they're doing. They haven't got the faintest idea in the world what the words mean, what the concepts mean, where anything came from, the etymology of the concepts and the ideas and the words that are used in religion. They haven't got the faintest idea in the world and couldn't care less, because it has nothing to do with football or basketball or Paris Hilton or anything else of any importance. So I'm just saying, it's just an amazing situation we have.
Well, it is, and also the chaos that you're describing here is also something that at the end of it serves the church and especially the government as well, because of course now they can implement further control, to try to bring stability to the streets, blah blah blah. But again, from the church point of view, this is like fuel for the fire. This is evidence that the Antichrist or Satan is out there on the streets, and that's why you need to turn back to the church, right?
Yeah, and it works out so much. When you start talking to the politicians and these guys who make the policy and know how this stuff is put together, and you begin to see this is really dark stuff. And that's why I said the people in this country especially, but all over, because I spent a lot of time in Europe also, and in the Middle East. And as I love the European people, but I notice, like America, they don't know what they're doing. They haven't got the faintest idea of what's going on. No. Nobody questions anything, and if you do, I
think it's worse actually in Europe. I hear a lot more, at least vocal people from the States that are questioning their government and so forth as well. But people are criticizing the European Union. Very few voices, unfortunately, from Europe.
Well, you're right. And I think it's kind of like inbred in the European to be afraid of government, because they have been so mistreated by the church, and so it's just a feeling that the peoples of Europe have, that there's been so much horrible oppression that they don't want to put themselves out there on the front lines.
Physical torture in most cases, and those few who had the guts to stand up against this and say no, those people were strapped up on poles, and tortured. And in many regards as well. Do you think now then that this is kind of ingrained into the the genetic memory almost of the people?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. We scientifically we know that's true. That there's a group mentality, a community mentality, where peoples, they may not have today have been a part of and actually saw it happen, but it's, it goes back to their parents. Their grandparents have told them stories, and the great grandparents told them stories, and so it's kind of in the national psyche and the psyche of the peoples to remember that government can be very, very, and of course with the coming of Adolf Hitler in Germany and in Europe, people are frightened of government. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to go there. At least in America, there's enough of the American spirit. There's not a whole lot left. We have the spirit. We just don't have any knowledge. We have the spirit because there's a lot of anarchy and violence and that kind of thing in the American people, in the American psyche, carrying guns and fighting on the streets. We got the spirit. We just don't have any education. That's the problem. And so we turn on each other rather than intellectually finding out who is doing what to us and do something about it. Yeah. We just fight each other, So
that's too
America
bad.
has the spirit. Yeah. America has the spirit, but they don't have the knowledge.
So let's talk a little bit about the dawn of their new day, the New World Order. I see it emerging as a global socialist, dictatorship in one way or another. And if we draw the analogy to the Roman Empire again, okay, granted, it did, transform in the past, but symbolically, obviously, the Roman Empire fell. And I feel that we might be in for the same situation here as well. The bigger this thing gets, the harder it will fall when it eventually goes down. So I'm, at the end of it anyway, positive. Well, what do you think, Jordan?
I totally agree. I always say that the light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming. As far as I'm concerned, you're totally right. And before we go off and before we leave, there's a couple of things I want to make sure people understand about me. Sure. One is that I am not an activist, a political activist or social activist at all. Period. I've never been an activist for anything, and I'm not a party to any movement. Truth movement or any group movement like that or any social movements. I've never been a member of any of it, ever. And so when people, I want to clarify that because so many people put me in the truth movement or in some kind of an activist movement, patriot movement. I've never joined any patriot movement. People will put me into these things and say things about me, but for myself, I've never joined any patriot movement, no truth movement, or anything else. Yeah, I just doing what I've always done. As far back as a child, I was always asking too many questions and beginning to see how things work. And so I just want people.
You're walking your own path, Jordan. In that
sense.
I'm
just walking my own path to my own desires to learn and to know. And I appreciated other people in my life who were like that when I was growing up, who were out there on the cutting edge doing their own thing and helping me when I wanted to know. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just giving it back to humanity, the help that I was given. I'm just trying to turn around and give out wisdom and knowledge and understanding to those people who want to know. Yep. So I'm not a part of any truth movement or any activist of any kind.
Well, same here. I think the people make the assumption because it sounds right to them or according to their own philosophy or whatnot. So they bunch you together with all these other groups out there and what have you. Yeah.
Right. And that another thing along that line that irritates me terribly is when people will hear me say something in some lecture 10 years ago, and it stuck with them. Then about 6 years ago, I said something on another lecture, and then last week I said something on the radio, and now they will put what they've heard all together and come up with a whole new thing that I've said that I didn't say at all. And I get that continually, daily. I get emails, people say, well, Jordan, you said this and that. I never said any of that ever. I said 1/4 of that, but that was 10 years ago. I said another quarter, but that was like 8 years ago. Right. Then I said another quarter, but that was last Wednesday.
Well, to them, it's 5 minutes old,
Yeah, they just heard you. Yeah. They just heard it.
Yeah.
And so now they go out on the web and say, well, Jordan Maxwell said this and that. I never said that. And so I've come to the point where I just give up. I'm not going to try and clarify anything for anyone, because now my philosophy is today, my philosophy about who I am and what I do is I'm just going to do the best I can with nothing, and that's the way I've always worked, with nothing. I'm going to do the best I can, and whoever is supposed to hear me will, and whoever's not supposed to hear me won't.
Right.
And whatever you take away from whatever I've said, whatever you get from it is what you get. And if you don't like it, well, that's all right too. So I don't care if people understand anymore, and that they're misquoting me and attributing things I never said. I've come to the point where I don't care. I'm just going to do what I do, and if you're smart enough to hear what I'm saying and do some research on your own, you'll see what I'm talking about.
It's not that difficult. I mean, take what you can and leave the rest. That's what I've always said.
Of course, go back to rest.
Yeah.
I'm not running for office. I don't care one way or the other. I just do what I do.
Right. Well, you do it very well, from my point of view. And again, this is not about, as we talked about last time, Jordan, this is not about being in total agreement with every single point here. This is about exchanging ideas and make people think. And in most regards, unfortunately, again, by focusing on the negative, that is what makes people think. That is also what makes them thinking about what is positive in their own lives, which is at the end of the day a good thing. So, job well done.
I was at a big conference here in Los Angeles with the motion picture television personality Steve Allen. Steve Allen used to be a very big movie star in Hollywood, but he was like me. He enjoyed discussing these kind of things, and so we were on the stage together. And they asked him, they said, Steve, why do you have anything to do with the work of Jordan Maxwell and talk about these different subjects that you are talking about today? Why don't you just stick with your music and your Hollywood career and not talk about this other stuff? And he said to them, look, I have a character flaw. That's why I do what I do. It's an imperfection in me. The character flaw I have is I love wisdom. I love knowledge. I love investigating and understanding and reading and studying. While most people don't like doing that, that's what I love doing. That's why I'm here with Jordan Maxwell. That's why I'm here talking about things that most people don't want to hear, because I love wisdom. I want to know.
Yeah.
And so that's been my feeling. I'm not asking anybody to agree with anything I'm saying. All I really want to do is cause them to think, question for and start doing some research on your own.
Absolutely. And Jordan, as we begin to round things up here for this time, I want to mention obviously your new DVDs. We mentioned briefly Lucifer, Bringer of the New Age. That seems very interesting. We talked briefly about Lucifer last time, and I think you have a really interesting perspective on this particular character or mythological figure, however you want to look at it. And then you have Mazzaroth. The saga as well, the new one. Is there anything you want to mention about these DVDs, Jordan?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be very, very controversial because I know people have an idea around the world who Lucifer is and what they think about Lucifer. But I'm just telling you, according to the Bible and according to all the biblical reference works, Lucifer is not who you think it is. There's a very big difference between Lucifer and Satan. Satan is referred to in the Bible as the devil, and the very word devil is simply putting a D in front of the word evil, becomes devil. So, and the word God comes from the same root word we get good. So you take an O out of good, it becomes God. So God is good and devil is evil. But when you understand there's a major difference between being devil or Satan and Lucifer. Lucifer is not the devil.
Yeah.
It means something else, and it's very, very interesting when you start really doing the research on Lucifer and what it means, where it came from. And then, of course, I've got the other video with it called Mazzaroth. And so many people in both Judaism and Christianity have no idea in the world about that subject of Mazzaroth. But it's in the Old Testament, and it is the basis. Mazzaroth is not only in the Old Testament, book of Job, but it's also the very basis for the New Testament. And so Christians, who are following the story of the New Testament do not know that they're actually following Mazzaroth. It's called Mazzaroth, Mazzaroth. And it's a very interesting story about what Mazzaroth, where it came from, what it means, how it's connected to Lucifer, the New Age. And of course, if you go back even further, behind that, I have other videos dealing with similar subjects, Messiah and King Solomon's Temple. Now, there's two subjects that'll really blow your mind. I have two videos one's called Messiah, and it has to do with the symbol on the dollar bill, the triangle, the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, where that really came from, what it actually means, and how that symbol on the dollar bill is connected to King Solomon's Temple. I mean, it's really an extremely interesting and controversial story. So I've got a lot of what I consider to be very important and interesting video stuff. So if you go on my website to jordanmaxwell.com, that's JORDAN, Maxwell.com, and go to What's New. Because on the What's New page on my website, I got lots of new stuff that I've been doing. And and we can do another show another time and get back into some of these subjects again.
Absolutely, that would be great. I want to recommend people to take a look at that two-part series with those two new DVDs, jordanmaxwell.com, as you mentioned, and also I'm glad to see that you're beginning to really get to getting out many of the new DVDs now, many of these that you're putting together, because it's great to see that you're producing and putting them out there, Jordan. So I want to encourage you to keep up the great work and keep doing what you're doing, because it's very valuable, Jordan.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. If we have a moment, one last thing. I had an experience a couple of months ago that a young lady came up to me in San Francisco. She was a psychic from Sacramento. And I'm not saying what she said to me is true, and I'm not validating it. I'm just telling you what she said. And she came up to me and she said, Jordan, I've been told to tell you that you have in your computer some very big videos that you have been working on for many years, but they're very large, and you haven't been able to do anything with them because they're too big and you got too much to do. And I said, that's exactly right. And she said, well, I've been told that you have till April 11th to finish your projects, because after April 11th of this year, something bad is going to happen on the earth, and it's going to completely change. All of your work is going to be changed and challenged because of what's going to happen on the earth. So you need to get through with what you're doing, because something's going to happen on the earth on the April 11th or just shortly afterwards, and it's going to change everything you've been doing. And it's going to bring you into the public eye even more, because of the things you've been talking about. They're really going to start happening. And so I just put that out there, because I don't know. I'm just telling you what she said. I have no idea what she meant. I asked her, what do you mean it's going to be so severe, it's going to be very bad? She said, all I know is that's what I'm getting. Is that something's going to happen on the earth, and it's going to highlight your work that you've been doing. So I don't know.
This year, 2011?
Yeah, this year, 2011, a couple of weeks from now.
Well, there you go.
April 11th.
Do you feel she's right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I know what she was talking about. I think there is something going to happen very soon that's going to be very, very serious on the earth. And it's going to affect all the nations of the world. And I think I know what it is. But, I'm not validating what she said. I'm not, I'm not saying it's true. I'm just telling you what the lady said.
Now, do you want to share with us what you suspect it might be?
No, because it might reflect on me in a way I don't want it to. So
okay.
What I want to do is I want to just leave it alone and just see if she was right. She very well might not be. I kind of hope she's not right, but but we'll see soon enough.
See. Yeah.
That's what she said.
All right.
But
well,
she said it has something to do with my work.
Okay. Yeah.
And so
these are reflections of the times that we are in. I guess there's a lot of these, and have been for a long time, obviously. But there's a lot of these dates flying around right now. It feels like the times are very uneasy, if I put it that way.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I think it has something to do. And if you haven't gotten my videos, you want to go on the video. I'm just promoting myself, but the fact is that so much of what I am doing and causing to in my life to do is in my videos, and so I've got like 6 or 7 new videos, and all of them are very controversial. So I don't know how much longer I will be allowed to have a website and be able to distribute this kind of knowledge. So I would suggest everybody go on the website and check it out. Go
Absolutely.
to what's new, if nothing else. And when you go on my website, check out everything. Go through the whole website. You'll be surprised how many people don't do that.
Oh, I remember. We talked about that last time. It's kind of fun, actually.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they go on the website and see the home page, and that's it. They didn't see anything.
Yeah. Well, do it, folks. JordanMaxwell.com and look through specifically the what's new, but all the other research tabs and these things as well, the buttons there, because it's great stuff for you there if you're not familiar with what the work that Jordan has been doing here. But I want to say, thank you very much, obviously, for the update, Jordan, and thank you for your time. It's always great to have you with us. Please take good care of yourself, and let's talk more soon, Jordan.
All right, let's do it. I was always happy to be with you, and thank you again for inviting me. And get back to me, and we'll do another show.
We'll be back with more in just a few days. You're welcome to join us then. In the meantime, check out our website, redicecreations.com, for more radio, TV programs, and regularly updated news. Also, take a look in our members area for all the material that we have available for you, including films, video interviews, music, audio commentary, and more. Also, of course, our first program